There comes a moment in life when the people who thought they had the upper hand are forced to look again, and what they see leaves them unsettled. They expected pain to break you. They expected distance to weaken you. They expected silence to destroy your spirit. They believed that if they withdrew their love, their attention, their presence, or their approval, you would collapse beneath the weight of it. But instead, you grew. Instead, you became clearer, wiser, stronger, and more anchored than before. That is the part they never planned for, because when a soul begins to awaken, the old games lose their power. When a person stops begging to be chosen and starts choosing peace, the entire script changes. When you stop chasing what was never meant to hold you, you begin to recover the parts of yourself that were buried under confusion. And that recovery is not small. It is sacred. It is the hand of God restoring what people tried to scatter. Some people plot from wounded pride. They think withholding affection will create hunger. They think mixed signals will create dependence. They think coldness will create pursuit. But divine wisdom always outlasts manipulation. There is a higher law at work in life. What is built on insecurity will eventually shake, and what is built on truth will stand. So while they were busy planning your downfall, heaven was quietly strengthening your foundation. Do not underestimate the power of a healed heart. A healed heart sees through patterns. A healed heart no longer confuses inconsistency with love. A healed heart no longer calls chaos chemistry. A healed heart learns that peace is not weakness, and self-respect is not rebellion. It is wisdom. It is maturity. It is the moment you stop asking for crumbs from a table where you were always meant to sit as a child of worth. They are shocked because they expected you to stay broken. They expected you to keep repeating the same emotional cycle. They expected you to return every time they withdrew, every time they distanced themselves, every time they tried to make you prove your value. But the moment you stopped returning to what hurt you, their power began to dissolve, not because they became stronger, but because you became free. And freedom reveals everything. It reveals who was genuine and who was performing. It reveals who cherished you and who was only feeding their ego. It reveals who wanted to build and who only wanted to control. That revelation can be uncomfortable, but it is also mercy, because clarity is a blessing, even when it arrives through disappointment. Sometimes God allows the truth to surface so you can stop calling a prison a relationship. Never mourn too long over what was exposed. Some losses are not punishments. They are protections. Some endings are not failures. They are deliverance. What looked like rejection may have been redirection. What felt like abandonment may have been preservation. What felt like abandonment may have been preservation. What seemed unfair may have been the very thing that saved your future. That is why you must keep your spirit clean when others try to poison your peace. Do not let bitterness become your language. Do not let revenge become your identity. Do not let disappointment harden your heart. Stay rooted in truth. Stay anchored in prayer. Stay committed to becoming the kind of person your pain could not ruin. Because the highest response to betrayal is not collapse. It is transformation. There is power in becoming unmovable in your values. There is power in refusing to be manipulated by emotional withdrawal. There is power in no longer reacting to every absence as if it defined you. When you know who you are, you no longer need to beg for validation from people who never had the capacity to honor you. Your self-worth stops being negotiated. Your peace stops being optional. Your destiny stops waiting for permission. And this is where the divine principle becomes clear. What was meant for harm can be overturned. What was designed to disgrace, you can become the very story that strengthened you. What was plotted in darkness can be exposed in the light. Every scheme eventually meets truth. Every false mask eventually slips. Every prideful heart eventually has to face the consequences of what it sowed. So stand firm. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. Do not dim your light to soothe someone else's insecurity. Do not question your worth because someone else lacked vision. Walk in wisdom, walk in dignity, walk in grace, and remember this. The person who tried to make you feel small was often only revealing the size of their own emptiness. The storm did not come to destroy you. It came to reveal what was already inside you. Courage, discernment, patience, resilience, faith. You are not what they said you were. You are not the confusion they created. You are not the wound they tried to keep open. You are the lesson they failed to understand. That a person aligned with truth cannot be permanently trapped by deception. Let them be shocked. Let them be confused. Let them watch from a distance as the very thing they plotted becomes the thing that elevates you. Because when God is for you, no hidden scheme can finally prosper. And when your heart is surrendered to truth, every backfire becomes a testimony. Your peace is the victory. Your growth is the evidence. Your healing is the answer. The ones who walk away in silence often mistake it for victory, but silence can also be the beginning of their exposure. When someone quietly retreats, when they stop reacting, stop chasing, or stop trying to validate another's shifting affections, it can feel like a surrender to those watching. To the manipulator, the avoidant, or the one who thrives on control, silence is a puzzle, a space that seems empty, a canvas where they expect their influence will continue to paint fear, confusion, or compliance. They think that if they withdraw, if they play their games of absence and mixed signals, you will scramble to fill the void, proving that their power over you is real. They are convinced that silence equals defeat. But here is the truth that often goes unnoticed. Silence is not always a weakness. In fact, silence can be the most profound statement of strength. When a person decides to step back, to stop responding to manipulation, they are not yielding. They are observing, evaluating, and reclaim. They are observing, evaluating, and reclaiming themselves. They are creating space to breathe, to think clearly, and to recognize the patterns that once held them captive. It is in that silence that clarity grows, and clarity is the first step toward liberation. What the manipulator perceives as emptiness is actually preparation. What they see as absence is actually presence. The presence of wisdom, discernment, and self-respect. In that quiet, the avoidance power begins to unravel without anyone having to confront them directly. Their assumptions about control, about influence, begin to fail because they rely on reaction, on dependence, on predictable behavior. Silence interrupts that cycle. When you no longer respond to manipulation with anxiety, anger, or desperation, the foundation of their perceived dominance begins to crumble. They realize too late that influence is not control, it is consent. And consent cannot be granted to someone who is steadfast in their principles, anchored in their values, and aligned with the truth of their own heart. Silence also exposes, Harriger. It draws a line between those who are truly invested and those who are merely playing a role. When you stop engaging in every emotional tug-of-war, you force others to confront themselves. Their motives, their strategies, their intentions, they all become more visible. People who thought they were clever, who thought they could orchestrate outcomes from behind a mask, now face a mirror. Their plots, their schemes, their carefully constructed images start to reveal cracks. The silence becomes a lens, showing what was hidden in plain sight. Moreover, silence is a form of protection. When you withdraw from the chaos and the drama, you protect your energy, your peace, and your heart. You no longer feed into the games that were designed to confuse or control you. Instead, you reclaim the narrative of your life. You are no longer a participant in someone else's plans. You are the observer, the one who chooses how to respond and when. That is a quiet, unassailable power. It is a strength that cannot be measured by loud gestures, angry words, or dramatic confrontations. It is subtle, but it is absolute. Walking away in silence may feel counterintuitive to those who equate action with victory. Yet, in truth, it is often the first step toward liberation and exposure of the truth. It is in that silence that the avoidance illusions begin to collapse. It is in that quiet that you begin to rise above their games. What they mistake for defeat is actually a beginning, a declaration that you will not be moved by manipulation, that your peace cannot be bargained, and that your life will no longer be dictated by fear or control. Silence, in its deepest sense, is not the end. It is the dawn of self-realization and the subtle, unwavering power of one who knows their worth. What was plotted in secrecy cannot always survive the light of truth. There is a principle in life, a divine rhythm, that no matter how carefully someone plans to control, manipulate, or deceive, the universe has a way of revealing what is hidden. People often believe that their schemes, their secret strategies, or their subtle manipulations are safe because they are unseen. They think that if no one else knows, then no harm can come to them. They trust in concealment, in shadows, in the careful weaving of lies or half-truths. But the deeper truth is that light, clarity, and integrity always find their way. What is secret may appear secure for a time, but eventually, every hidden plan meets exposure. Those who plot in darkness operate under the illusion that others are powerless without knowledge of the plan. They assume that the person they are targeting cannot see beyond the immediate effects, that they can shape reality through deceit or cunning. Yet life has a way of balancing itself. The patterns that are sown in dishonesty, cruelty, or manipulation cannot hold under the weight of truth. The energy that fuels secret schemes is often fear, insecurity, and pride. And such energy is unstable. It cannot sustain growth. It cannot withstand scrutiny. It cannot withstand scrutiny. It cannot withstoppable power. It does not rush. It does not scream. It does not negotiate. But when given time, it penetrates the walls built by secrecy. Every manipulation leaves traces. Every avoidance leaves a gap. Those who understand this principle begin to notice subtle shifts, the inconsistencies, the contradictions, the faint whispers of reality that reveal what has been hidden. Even when deception seems flawless, the universe has a way of drawing the truth to the surface. This is why people who plot in secrecy often find themselves shocked when their plans unravel. They are not used to working against a force that cannot be manipulated, against a law that cannot be ignored, against a divine order that ensures integrity eventually prevails. Exposure does not always come dramatically. Sometimes it comes gently, quietly, almost imperceptibly. A thought, a realization, a conversation, or a moment of clarity can pierce through the carefully constructed veil. And when it does, the foundation of the plot begins to crumble. What was meant to control, to wound, or to deceive now reveals the weakness of its creator. Plans built on dishonesty cannot withstand honesty. Strategies based on manipulation cannot survive wisdom. The more intricate the plot, the more spectacular its backfire, because the energy that fuels it was never aligned with truth to begin with. Furthermore, the revelation of hidden schemes empowers those who are targeted. When the light exposes what was secret, the person who was once at the mercy of manipulation gains insight, discernment, and strength. They see the pattern, understand the intent, and reclaim control. The very act of plotting becomes the agent of its own undoing, because secrecy cannot persist against the gravity of truth. This is the divine principle at work. What is intended to harm can ultimately instruct and elevate. What is meant to deceive can become evidence of wisdom, and what is designed to control can become a catalyst for freedom. Those who plot in shadows may feel triumphant for a moment, but light has a way of moving, of finding, of revealing. What was plotted in secrecy cannot withstand it, and those who sought to manipulate are often the first to experience the consequences of their own design. In this truth, there is both justice and instruction. The backfire is inevitable because life aligns with honesty and integrity, and any force built on deception will eventually meet its reckoning. The higher path is clear: honor, transparency, and divine align. Men ensure that what is secret cannot endure when the heart is steadfast in truth. When a heart chooses healing, manipulation loses its power. There is a profound truth in this. Nothing can control a person who has learned to nurture their own spirit, who has chosen to repair the fractures within themselves, rather than chase validation from others. People who manipulate, who withdraw, who plot and scheme, rely on the assumption that their target is dependent, insecure, or incomplete. They assume that emotional vulnerability is a weakness, that fear, neediness, or confusion can be leveraged as a tool for control. But healing changes everything. Healing removes the levers that manipulators pull. Healing transforms the heart from a reactive instrument into a fortress of discernment, wisdom, and peace. Healing is not a passive process. It requires awareness, courage, and sometimes solitude. It requires looking at past wounds, not with blame, not with anger, but with clarity and a desire to grow. It means understanding patterns, how people manipulate, why avoidance is used, and what triggers your own response to it. Once a heart is committed to healing, it becomes nearly impossible for outside forces to dictate its rhythm. Silence no longer terrifies it. Absence no longer diminishes it. Lies no longer sway it. The healed heart understands that its worth does not depend on external validation. It knows that peace cannot be negotiated by anyone's behavior. Manipulators depend on cycles, confusion, tension, pursuit, and reward. They thrive on reaction. The moment a person chooses healing, these cycles begin to lose traction. When a heart is anchored in understanding and self-respect, attempts at control bounce off like water on stone. The manipulator may continue to act, to withdraw, to test, to provoke, but their impact is diminished. Their power lies in creating fear, doubt, and insecurity. Healing neutralizes all three. A healed heart sees through the games, refuses to participate in chaos, and maintains dignity in the face of provocation. There is also an element of divine law in this principle. The universe, life, or higher wisdom, whatever you call it, supports those who choose restoration over retaliation. Healing aligns a person with truth, and truth is stronger than deceit. When a heart commits to healing, it is no longer reactive. It is proactive in protecting its peace. It recognizes that growth is the ultimate response to manipulation, that self-respect is the most unassailable armor, and that spiritual alignment is a shield that no human scheme can penetrate. Healing also fosters discernment. A heart in recovery is no longer blind to patterns, no longer naive about intentions. It begins to see clearly who deserves presence and who is only passing through lessons. This clarity reduces the space in which manipulation can operate. Attempts to confuse or provoke a healed heart meet a calm, unwavering surface. Manipulation cannot survive where boundaries are clear, where self-love is strong, and where purpose is defined. Ultimately, a healed heart transforms every backfire into a triumph. Those who plotted against it may feel frustrated or shocked, but their schemes cannot touch the growth, the peace, and the wisdom cultivated in the process of restoration. Healing is the ultimate equalizer. It restores the individual, dismantles the manipulator's influence, and demonstrates that power over someone's life is only possible when that life consents. Choose healing, and you reclaim the authority over your own story, transforming weakness into strength, reaction into mastery, and betrayal into liberation. Distance does not destroy strength. Sometimes it reveals it. There is a tendency in life to equate absence with loss, to assume hat distance diminishes value, love, or influence. When someone withdraws, intentionally or not, others often panic, assuming that what is missing must mean weakness. But distance, whether physical, emotional, or relational, is not inherently destructive. In fact, it is often the measure by which true strength is revealed. It is in separation that resilience is tested, patience is cultivated, and the heart's foundations are seen for what they truly are. When someone distances themselves from a manipulator or from a toxic situation, they are not surrendering, they are strengthening. The absence allows space to reflect, to think clearly, and to regain perspective. Without the constant interference of drama or manipulation, the mind can regain its focus, the heart can rediscover its rhythm, and the spirit can reclaim its power. What others perceive as retreat or weakness is often the quiet, deliberate work of fortifying the soul. Strength is not always loud or visible. It is steady, unwavering, and rooted in clarity of purpose. Distance gives it room to grow. Manipulators often assume that distance is equivalent to vulnerability. They think that if they pull away, if they withhold attention, if they create emotional voids, the other person will crumble. They believe absence can provoke dependence, that it can control behavior, or that it can reinforce submission. But they fail to understand that a strong heart is not tethered to presence or proximity. Strength does not rely on constant validation. Strength thrives in the unseen spaces where reflection, healing, and self-awareness cultivate a power that cannot be manipulated. Distance is the crucible in which this power is tested and proven. Moreover, distance reveals character, both of the one who distances themselves and the one who observes. For the person stepping back, it provides clarity about what is essential, what is healthy, and what aligns with their higher principles. It exposes patterns that were invisible in the noise of constant interaction. For those attempting manipulation, it becomes evident how much their influence depended on reaction rather than respect, on control rather than connection. What they thought would weaken you only exposes their own limitations and the fragility of their schemes. Distance also allows the heart to choose intentionally rather than react impulsively. When removed from the immediacy of conflict, games, or manipulation, a person can discern their true feelings, prioritize their peace, and set boundaries that are unshakable. It transforms the energy that once fueled anxiety or submission into clarity, dignity, and self-respect. The longer the distance is held with purpose, the more evident the strength becomes, not just to the individual, but to those who once underestimated it. Finally, distance is a revelation of power, not a loss. It demonstrates that independence, wisdom, and self-sovereignty cannot be dictated by others' attempts at control. It is a reminder that strength is not dependent on approval, proximity, or validation. Distance tests the heart and mind and proves that those who cultivate inner resilience cannot be shaken by absence. Those who tried to manipulate, who expected compliance through withdrawal, often face shock when the very space they created illuminates the fortitude of their target. Distance, therefore, is not a void. It is a mirror. It reflects true strength, exposes manipulation, and allows the soul to rise unbound. It proves that power is not always about closeness, attention, or presence. True power is cultivated quietly, nurtured in absence, and revealed in the unwavering calm of a heart that refuses to be controlled. Pride builds traps, but wisdom builds freedom. There is a subtle but powerful law that Jai overruns human interaction. Those who act from pride, arrogance, or self-importance often construct cages for themselves, while those who act from wisdom, humility, and insight discover paths to liberation. Pride is seductive. It whispers that control, domination, or manipulation is the key to success. It convinces a person that withholding, deceiving, or plotting will give them advantage. Yet pride is blind to its own weaknesses. It cannot see that the very strategies it relies on carry the seeds of failure. Pride constructs illusions of power, but these illusions are fragile, temporary, and easily undone by truth, time, and divine alignment. People who plot or manipulate often do so out of pride. They believe that by controlling outcomes, they can dominate circumstances, secure affection, or prove their superiority. They think they are clever, untouchable, and untraceable. But wisdom always undermines such assumptions. Wisdom is patient. Wisdom observes without reacting. Wisdom understands the natural flow of cause and effect. When someone acts from wisdom rather than ego, they are not playing games. They are aligning themselves with principles that cannot be shaken by manipulation. Pride relies on reaction, while wisdom relies on understanding. Pride creates tension, conflict, and chaos. Wisdom cultivates clarity, peace, and resilience. Pride blinds the manipulator to the consequences of their own actions. In their pursuit of control, they fail to recognize that their schemes are visible to the universe and that life itself has a way of restoring balance. They build traps, thinking others will fall in them, but these traps often backfire. The very energy spent on control, secrecy, and deceit becomes the source of their undoing. Pride believes it is a shield, but it is actually a snare. Wisdom, on the other hand, builds freedom, not just for the wise person, but for the O's around them. It nurtures transparency, honesty, and integrity. It creates structures that endure because they are rooted in truth rather than illusion. Those who choose wisdom over pride gain clarity in relationships and life decisions. They recognize manipulative patterns for what they are and refuse to participate in them. They understand that respect cannot be forced, that love cannot be coerced, and that influence cannot replace integrity. Every time someone tries to control a situation with pride, the wise heart steps back, observes, and responds according to principle rather than emotion. The wise person does not need to prove themselves. They only need to act in alignment with truth. Wisdom also cultivates self-mastery. Pride is reactive, impulsive, and often destructive. Wisdom is intentional, patient, and transformative. When faced with those who seek to manipulate, the wise heart does not fall into anger, revenge, or confusion. Instead, it recognizes the lessons within the experience, maintains boundaries, and continues on the path of growth. In doing so, wisdom turns what could have been a source of suffering into a source of empowerment. Ultimately, pride traps, while wisdom liberates. Pride believes in domination. Wisdom believes in alignment. Pride seeks immediate gain. Wisdom invests in lasting truth. Pride fears exposure. Wisdom embraces clarity. Those who plot, deceive, or manipulate may feel strong for a moment, but their pride ensures their limitations are revealed. Those who live with wisdom, humility, and discernment experience freedom, a freedom that no manipulation, no avoidance, and no hidden agenda can ever touch. It is the highest law of life. Ego builds prisons, but insight builds pathways, and the heart that walks those paths is untouchable. When life is guided by divine principles, every hidden attack can become a setup for elevation. N. There is a timeless wisdom woven into the fabric of existence. What is meant to harm, deceive, or destabilize you often carries within it the seeds of your greatest growth. Those who plot against you, who manipulate, withdraw, or scheme, operate under the illusion that their actions have ultimate power. They fail to realize that the universe, divine law, or the higher order of life, whatever you call it, has a way of turning every challenge, every betrayal, and every backfire into an opportunity for awakening. When your life is anchored in these higher principles, what others intended as harm transforms into a force that strengthens, refines, and elevates you. Divine principles are the laws of truth, integrity, and balance. They are the foundation upon which unshakable strength is built. When you act in alignment with these principles, you are no longer at the mercy of manipulation. No plot, no withdrawal, no act of deceit can ultimately derail you because your path is guided by wisdom far greater than human schemes. What others see as obstacles or attacks are often divine instruments, shaping your character, testing your resolve, and preparing you for the life you are meant to live. Every challenge is a lesson, every betrayal a mirror, every setback a springboard. Those who operate from secrecy and avoidance often fail to understand that timing, truth, and principle are far more powerful than their short-term tactics. They measure power in immediate reactions, in control over emotions, and in temporary influence. But divine alignment measures power differently, in resilience, discernment, and growth. When you maintain your integrity, keep your heart pure, and act from a place of wisdom and alignment, the schemes of others do not destroy you. They illuminate your strength. What was meant to diminish you becomes the very catalyst for your clarity, confidence, and elevation. Divine guidance also teaches patience. Those who plot often seek instant results. They expect reactions, dependency, or compliance. And when they do not get it, they feel frustrated or shocked. But patience transforms the silent, unseen moments into sacred opportunities. It allows truth to surface naturally. It allows boundaries to solidify, and it allows your energy to be preserved for things that matter. When you trust the process of life, guided by divine principles, every backfire is a message that your alignment is intact, your integrity unbroken, and your purpose unfolding. This principle also emphasizes perspective. When you begin to see life through the lens of divine wisdom, you understand that setbacks are not punishments, that betrayals are not endpoints, and that hidden attacks are not defeats. They are invitations to rise. Every action taken against you that seeks to confuse or control now becomes a reflection of the other person's limitations and an opportunity for your own mastery. By aligning with higher principles, you turn what could have been trauma into teaching, pain into power, and deception into discernment. Ultimately, divine principles ensure that life is never unfair in the long run. Those who manipulate, avoid, or scheme may feel temporary satisfaction, but the divine order cannot be thwarted. What was intended as harm becomes the instrument of your growth. What was designed to diminish you becomes proof of your resilience. What was plotted in shadows becomes illumination for your path. When your life is guided by truth, integrity, and alignment with higher principles, every hidden attack backfires. Not on you, but on the illusion of control your adversary believed they had. This is the sacred law of life. Nothing built on deception can endure. Nothing rooted in manipulation can prosper. And everything aligned with divine truth elevates. Every hidden attack, every carefully plotted move, every moment of betrayal becomes a stepping stone to your awakening, your strength, and your destiny. Those who seek to harm often end up revealing their own weaknesses, while you rise, empowered, unstoppable, and guided by the highest wisdom.